Hey there, Deer Park. I want to bring another training moment to you. This is going to cover search area tactics and rescue in large open spaces or spaces that have shelving and things that we consider like a warehouse. So here is Max Archer and a couple others that will join us here in a little bit, and we ask you to pay attention and enjoy this video.
All right, so we're here today to talk about LSAR, Large Area Search and Rescue. This is primarily a tactic that we're going to use in our commercial occupancies, areas that have large open spaces that are a traditional means of search, wall search and oriented search, aren't going to be as effective given the surface area of the building. By way of introduction, we're going to do a quick review of the hazards that we face during commercial structure fires. First thing is building construction. Usually these buildings are going to be type 1, type 2, or type 3 type occupancies. Type 1 means it has some level of fire resistance built on it. It's still encased in concrete or spray-on fireproofing. That gives us a 2 to 3 hour window for effective fire attack, search and rescue operations. Maybe even a little bit longer depending upon how effective our fire attack is. Type 2 means that it's non-combustible but unprotected type of building materials. So things like steel I-beams, things like lightweight steel trusses, tilt wall construction are usually the types of building construction that you see with a commercial structure. Type 3 is our ordinary construction. Non-combustible walls, but combustible structural members along the roof and floor joists. So in all three of these types of situations, the building construction can work for us or it can work against us. It might give us more time to search or it might give us less time to search depending upon whether it's type 1, type 2, or type 3 construction. Second hazard to be aware of that's related to building construction is fire behavior. Large open areas makes it difficult for us to identify the seat of the fire, to make a beeline to that seat of the fire, and to search the high probability areas where we'll find victims. Generally speaking, more firefighters are killed in commercial structures than residential structures because they attempt to adapt their residential tactics to commercial tactics as opposed to adopting a unique set of commercial strategies and tactics to deal with these types of situations. So large open areas make it difficult for us to identify where the fire is. If the fire is high up above us, then we might have great visibility, we might have great low heat conditions when we make entry into the structure. So we need to start thinking about ways to identify hazards that exist to us. So in this room, we have a drop ceiling with ceiling tiles that are combustible, and these ceiling tiles hide void spaces above them. So when we're making entry to our McDonald's or our classrooms or into office buildings, we need to take a pipe pole with us and push this space open, see if there's any heat or smoke that come out of that drop ceiling. Within the rec hall itself, you can see that we have a high ceiling with steel I-beams, which, because heat rises, we won't necessarily be able to feel that heat or see that smoke when we make entry. So when we make entry into these types of occupancies, we need to think about using our TIC to see if the fire is starting to impinge upon those structural members and the hazards that present to us, whether we need to push that fire back, pull those structural members while we make our advance onto the fire itself. And so fire behavior and building construction are related, but one of the advantages we have in commercial buildings is the unique types of systems that are required by code to have. We got fire protection systems like sprinklers, standpipes. We got fire alert systems that notify building occupants that there's a fire inside the building, and we have business hours that identify when we're likely to find victims, where we're likely to find them. Because a fire alarm going off, we can anticipate people moving towards the exits, and we can start gearing our strategy and tactics around the likelihood that we would be able to find, or the likelihood of where we would find our individual victims. So the first tactic we're going to talk about is called hook and look. This is a tactic that could be used by the RIT team, could be used by the search group, could really be used during any type of search and rescue scenario. But for our large area search and rescue, our LSAR scenarios, we can use this to maximize the probability of finding victims within so many feet of the exit. Remember that because there's an alarm system in these types of buildings, people are going to be moving towards the exits, and we can use that to our advantage whenever we're making entry to whatever point of entry we have. So, if you think about a commercial building by code is required to have a point of entry or exit within every 200 feet of the building. So in the rec hall, we got 1, 2, 3, 4 points of entry, 4 points of egress. So we can use that to our advantage when we're doing a targeted search. So in this scenario with the hook and look, the firefighter is going to make entry. They're going to do their size up, live fire, and layout with their TIC camera, and another firefighter can come in, hook their foot on the door frame, and do a full body search within the point of entry. This doesn't require a lot of energy, doesn't require a lot of manpower, but if we do this for every point of entry that we have in the building, there's a high probability we'll find the victims that are leaving the building because the alarm system is activated. So hook and look is our first, most simple method of large area search, and in doing so, we can look along the floor line to see what the layout of the building is, where a fire might be located, and where we might be able to find victims. We talked about hooking and looking. Hooking and looking is our primary tactic that we can use to size up the interior of the building, looking at live fire and layout. While the firefighters hooking and looking, we got 2 other firefighters that are working on establishing our search rope system. One firefighter is establishing a solid anchor to establish their point of entry to the structure. They got the tagline ready to go, and they meet up with the firefighter that's hooking and looking to make entry into our structure. So once we make entry into our structure, we can establish our search of a large open area. So this might be a dance hall like in the rec hall or an event center. It could be a gymnasium inside a school or a church. It could be a warehouse that doesn't have a lot of product. But our hook and look guy bumps up to our search guy, in this case our anchorman. We got 2 wingmen that are going to establish their connection with our anchorman using their webbing, their department issued webbing. Department issued webbing is about 20 feet. Our anchorman establishes his connection, maintains connection to the webbing, and then our wingman starts searching off into an orbital pattern, searching all the material that they can. Our anchorman is using their thermal imaging camera to maintain accountability of his firefighters, and if he sees somebody on the camera, he can direct his wingmen to that victim. Anchorman, come up. Once our wingmen have searched that area, our anchorman can come and meet up with his wingman. So from this point, we can continue to move off into any 20-foot direction, continuing to search using the orbital pattern to search, and our webbing to tie off our wingmen to our anchorman. So again, large open areas, gymnasiums, auditoriums, dance halls, the rec hall. This is a good pattern to use. Again, using our search rope that's anchored outside the building, our anchorman moves to a defensible position, uses his TIC cam to maintain accountability of his wingmen, and then his wingmen use their 20-foot department issue webbing to search in an orbital pattern until they reach the point that they get together and they call the anchorman forward. All right, so we've talked about large area search in situations that we have large open areas, gymnasiums, dance halls, auditoriums, where there's nothing to subdivide this large area into segments. This next scenario we're going to look at is when we have rows of material, aisles of material. We're talking Walmart with rows of material. We're talking warehouses with shelves of product that's stored on it. We're talking about classrooms that have desks divided into rows and aisles. We're talking about churches that have pews divided into rows and aisles. In this case, we're going to use a technique called anchor, point, and shoot in our search line in order to search these areas as efficiently as possible. So in this case, firefighter makes entry into the structure. We're looking at live fire and layout. We're hooking and looking while the rest of the team is establishing the search line. So we have our anchorman tying off our search rope to a stable object outside the building. Anchorman's job is going to be maintaining control of the search rope throughout the scenario. After our hook and look firefighter looks and establishes what the structure looks like, he looks and sees that we have aisles of material. Our anchorman takes the search rope to the first aisle or first row that needs to be searched. In doing so, he establishes himself as an anchor point for his wingmen to search off of. The wingmen maintain contact with the search rope, and search down the full length of the aisle. Anchorman's using their tick to maintain accountability of the firefighters. Firefighters might be searching an area that has to move the forklift down the full length. After they move to the end of the aisle, they start working their way back. Anchorman maintains control of the search line while also maintaining accountability of their firefighters. After they get back together, they move down to the next aisle of material. Anchorman again establishes the anchor point. Wingmen again work on using their search rope to search down the aisles, the full length of the aisles. So in this case, we have a wider aisle. They need to search out a wider area, so they get more of the search rope while they work. If we get to an area like this that's wide open, they might need to call their anchormen up to them so that they can revert to our orbital search pattern that we talked about before. So in this case, the anchorman would make his way up on the search rope, working his way up, working his way up, working his way up. And if need be at this point, we can go back to our orbital search pattern using our webbing to search off of our search line. So firefighters would deploy their webbing, they would search off orbital pattern, to search this large open area that they've come across. So hook and look, orbital search pattern, and the anchor point and shoot, all three of these methods could build upon each other depending upon how we size up the layout moving through the structure. It's not always going to be the same inside a warehouse, classroom, a auditorium, so on and so forth. And so we have to be adaptable with the equipment that we have and the tactics that we use. All right, our fourth and final search tactic that we'll talk about is called leapfrogging. Leapfrogging is our lowest common denominator. We don't have a tagline that's available with us. All we have is our department issue webbing, but we need to search a large open area. So in a large open area, we would usually use the orbital technique, sending off our anchorman to a defensible position, having our two wingmen search out. But in this scenario, we might be short-staffed. We might not have a tagline on our apparatus. We may only have two people to search as quickly and as much as we can. So in this case, firefighters are going to make entry inside the structure. And as always, we're going to do our hook and look. Looking at live fire and layout, using our tick to see what we can see inside the building, getting as oriented as we can. These two firefighters would use their webbing to tie off to one another. One firefighter would establish themselves as the wall man initially. Second firefighter will be searching out as they go. Firefighter that's on the wall is using their tick camera to maintain accountability of their firefighters. Once they reach the end of their line, they switch positions. Now, not ideal in a wall search scenario, but in this case, they still have their tagline and they have their wall to maintain orientation. Now, let's say we're inside a warehouse and we come across a room that's built into the perimeter of the structure. This could be an office, could be a small storage space. In this case, the two firefighters can resort to small area search tactics, wall search or oriented search, the traditional tactics that we use inside a residential structure. So if we needed to search this kitchen, we could send off one of our search guys into the room to search using our traditional search pattern. We can use the tether if we need to continue to search, but in this case, we're just using our traditional tactics that we use inside a residential structure. In this case, the firefighters have chosen to use an oriented search pattern. We have our oriented guy using the camera. So once they finish searching that room, they're going to revert back to their leapfrog technique, using the tagline, or using the webbing as a tether to search out as they go. So when they reach a stopping point, they switch positions. They leapfrog as they move throughout the room, using the tick to search those large open spaces. So leapfrog technique, we could search a large area with it. We do so with minimal manpower. We only need two guys that are associated with this position. Minimum equipment, all we need is our department issued webbing. We don't need a search line in order to do this search, but we can cover a lot of territory in this area, and we have the added benefit of preserving the energy and preserving air because we're rotating the responsibility for doing the search by leapfrogging the wall man from one position to the other. Today we've talked about 4 tactics that can be used for search and rescue inside a large commercial structure. Our large area search and rescue LSAR techniques. First tactic we talked about was hook and look. It could be used by the RIT team, it could be used by minimal manpower teams to make entry into the structure, looking at live fire and layout by hooking their foot onto the door frame and doing a full body search, taking advantage of the fact that our victims are likely to exit outside the structure because of the alarm systems that are inside the building. Second technique we talked about was the orbital search, using the search line outside the structure to establish our anchor point, moving to a large open area with our anchorman, and then using our wingmen and their webbing to search off into an orbital pattern. Third technique we talked about was for shelved or aisle type subdivided buildings. Our classrooms, our churches, our large stores like Walmart or H-E-B, large warehouses that have shelved material. We establish our anchor point outside the building by tying off our tagline. Our anchorman moves to a defensible position inside the structure and then uses the search line to maintain accountability of the firefighters as they move down the full length of the aisles, searching and then working their way back to the search firefighter. Moving to our next defensible position, anchorman continues this process. Last one we talked about was our lowest common denominator, the leapfrog technique. 2 firefighters are all we have for our search group. We need to search as quickly as we can with minimum equipment. All we need is our department issued webbing. We leapfrog around the building, covering as much territory as we can. When we reach these small enclaves like offices, storerooms, or individual compartments, we can resort to our small area search techniques, oriented search or wall search that we've covered in previous videos. So in conclusion, commercial fires, high risk, high hazard, low frequency events. We don't respond to a lot of these types of fires. However, we have a variety of options on the table. In the future, we should talk about fire attack options using the big line, using the blitz fire, using master streams as our fire attack options. But in the meantime, we have to start thinking about using the equipment that we have, the training that we have to adapt unique sets of commercial firefighting strategies and tactics. Using residential oriented search, wall search, inch and 3/4, not going to work on these large warehouses, not going to work on a well-involved fire within a commercial structure. In order to maximize our safety, as well as the safety of the citizens that we've sworn to protect, we need to adapt unique commercial strategies to deal with these types of situations.